Hey guys, how's it going? So made some progress. Yesterday I didn't film some of the items. It was just too awkward to get the camera views and everything. So just kind of a recap. The electric fan is on the radiator. This is a 16 volt electric fan running on a 12 volt system on the car power. And if you have a truck or a hot rod or anything where you need some extra airflow through the radiator, this is a great way of doing it. 16 inch, and these things go for about 40 bucks, and I'll put the Amazon link in the description. But if you have a conventional mechanical fan behind the radiator and just need a little bit extra boost, you can wire this on just a dashboard switch to kick on when you're kind of sitting in traffic, overheating a little bit. Or this could be your primary, which is what I am doing, and it could be controlled through a thermostat on the hot water to kick on at, like, say 185 degrees. So works out extremely well. Very thin profile, and it'll fit between most grills and the radiator. Got a smoking deal on some header pipes for the 2.3 liter Ford. 75 bucks free shipping on eBay. Could not believe it. And this is all stainless steel, but I am going to cover it up. I'm going to do a heat wrap around it, and I'll show you how to do that maybe a little bit later. And the heat wrap, supposedly it helps scavenge the gases and heat the pipe up more so it draws better, but I'm mostly doing it for the heat underneath the compartment here. Again, I have a fiberglass body that's going to be going on here. I am blowing a lot of air through here, but I just want to be absolutely sure I'm not heating the engine compartment up too hot with the fiberglass sidewall. So I'll do a heat wrap around here. I'll show you how to do that. Today's agenda, I need to punch the holes through the firewall here for the hot water. It's going to tap on here and here. I already have the heater and did that in the last video. See, this is part 7 of the build, and moving right along on a project. Won't be long. I'll be driving this, put some tires on it, take it around the block, without the body on, that is, and test everything out. The next item today is to get the Pure Spark ignition mounted up here. I think this is where I'm going to go with it. I also have a voltage regulator on this alternator, and I just don't have any room on the firewall for it, so I think I'm going to put it right in this location. And I need the starter solenoid mounted off the key on the ignition. And depending on where my hot water hoses come out, it might go right in there. So that's on today's list. Get all that done, get it wrapped up. I did get new spark plug wires, cleaned up all the paint, cleaned up the air cleaner, a new air cleaner inside, and it's looking really good. So if you haven't subscribed, please hit the button down there. Help support the channel. Look at my playlist on e-bike, solar, all my other hot rod builds, my Power Stroke diesel, my Cummins Model A truck. Quite a bit of variety there, up to 73 or 74 videos now since COVID. So I think what I'm going to do first is I need to bench prime the master cylinder. A lot of people refer to it as bench priming. So if you're replacing your master cylinder on an existing car, you're building new like I'm doing here, what you want to do is fill up the reservoir, and you want to get a kit. And this is a universal kit. I'll put the link, Amazon link, in the description, but it gives me all my fittings, and then some length of hose, and then some holders. And what I'm going to do is find the right fitting for here, plastic one, and then I'll run a piece of tube up and back into the master cylinder on both of the cylinders. And then pump the brake more, and what that's going to do is get all the air out of the master cylinder, so you're not pushing all that air down into your brake lines. So it saves a lot of time. Also, if you have an existing car and you want to save time on, you're still going to have to bleed the brakes, which is easy to do. Just have somebody inside the car unloosen the fitting here, have them press down the pedal slowly so it doesn't squirt across the garage. And then while they have the pedal held down, tighten this back up, let them draw more fluid out of the master cylinder in the reservoir back into the cylinder again, and just repeat the process until you see a good stream with no air bubbles coming out. So I'm going to go ahead and they call it bench priming. You could bolt this to the workbench on a vise and do it there by pushing in and out the plunger. But since I just have everything right here, I'm just going to do it right here with my actual brake pedal. So here is the little plastic fittings, and they give you an entire assortment. So anything you might run across, you probably have a fitting that's going to fit your needs. And screwed them in where the brake line would normally go. Got a little piece of hose, just cut it to length. And then they give you these little clips to hold the hose. So all we're going to do is recirculate the brake fluid in here by pumping the pedal. I'll put some fluid in here, some DOT3. It stands for Department of Transportation. 3 is the brake fluid. It's synthetic, I guess. Pick it up at any of the auto parts stores, pretty common stuff. But you want to check your vehicle for what brake fluid you need to use. Also, an extreme caution note, and believe me, I found out the hard way, is you don't want to drip any brake fluid on a painted surface. It'll just eat through the paint. Finish on your fender, on your hood. You don't want it splashing, so pump the pedal real slow. And make sure you have a couple good rags handy and some water. Because if you get that stuff on any painted surface, it just goes right through. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this up and get it pumping. And see if we can see some air bubbles, and then eventually when the air bubbles go away, we're done. All right, pumping it. You see all the air bubbles are gone. It's not bubbling anymore. So now put a rag underneath here, take these fittings off, put my regular brake lines on. But you see how much air came out of the piston that would normally go through all your brake lines and would just take forever. So this really speeds up the process. But now you know how to bench prime a master cylinder. Brake lines are connected back again. And my reservoir is full, ready to go to bleed the brakes. This stuff is water soluble, so if you drip a little bit on the ground, don't sweat it, just get the hose out and hose it down. I just did that. I had a couple drips, but just don't get it on any painted surface. And once you open up the container, it's recommended too that you not use it again, go buy a new one, and because it'll absorb moisture. And the last thing you want is moisture into the brake fluid. I'll have clutch working great. I'll have brakes. I have the accelerator pedal all connected now onto the linkage. You see that? That's working slick. And this is a hot rod cable that could be used on GM cars, anything you're building. If you need to replace a bad cable, you might want to consider one of these. I'll put the Amazon link in the description, braided line, and one size fits all. Just run it through the firewall, and then the cable, you can cut it whatever length you might need it, and then put it into the fitting right here, kind of like a Heim joint for a cable, and then you tighten down the Allen screw to the proper length. So what holds the electric fan on, it's kind of like a round zip tie that goes through the holes in the radiator, so it's not affecting it, not cutting the lines or anything. And then on the back there's this like washer that's kind of like the other end of the zip tie that goes over it and just ratchets down. And then they give you little pads for each side, so put those on first, put the zip tie, the round zip tie, through the hole, and then there's a little spring to keep some tension on it. Push this disc on until you get a little bit of tension. You don't want to compress the spring all the way, but see, like I have it right here, a little bit of flexible. And you're going to do that on all four corners. So there's one down below, one on this side, and then one down below over there. Really simple to add an electric fan onto your car. The brakes are all bled and functioning, work out great. If you get any air in the system, you'll have a squishy pedal because air can compress. Liquid doesn't compress, at least in brake fluid, in what we're doing here with brake fluid. But what you want to do is bleed the farthest wheel cylinder from the master cylinder. So on a lot of cases, I guess every case, it's going to be the passenger side rear wheel. Bleed that first, then come over, because this is all on one circuit, both wheels. Come and bleed the driver's side. And then I usually move up to the front, do the passenger side on the front because that's the longest run of brake line. And then come over and finish up by doing the driver's side. And again, you should have, the pedal should be pretty stiff, no squishiness to it. If you have squishiness to it, you didn't get all the air out, just repeat the process again until the brake hardens up. A lot of progress over the last day. I didn't record any of this because this was just tedious work. It would have taken up a lot of time, probably bore you to death. But I got the grommets through the firewall. Anytime that you want to run hoses or wires, you need a grommet, or else after a while the friction and the vibration is just going to burn a hole and short out your wires, or in this case create a leak. So I was able to pick up some large grommets from O'Reilly and ran my heater hoses through here and up and onto the water pump and the return thermostat on the vehicle, and mounted my starter solenoid. This is my DuraSpark. This is Ford's first whack at electronic ignition, getting rid of points in the distributor. So this unit needs to be plugged in. I need to extend the plug wires. Normally this, and also the voltage regulator. This has an external voltage regulator on the alternator. I typically use on my hot rod builds a one-wire GM alternator, which has the regulator built into it, but this is separate. And this would have been typically mounted onto the fender over on the side near the distributor, but I have nothing to mount it to, so I'm going to put them right here. These are all secured, ready to go, and then I'll just extend the wires over. And I'm going to do some wiring clips, kind of like I did those that follow the last part where I ran the fuel lines and stuff to the back. I use these little hoops that I get from Home Depot. They're real nice. They're metal, and then they have a rubber sleeve in it to protect it. So I'll put 1, 2, 3, 4 across here, and then I'll run all my wiring through here, kind of like a loom. And then I'll do a split loom on top of that to finish it up, make it look nice. So anyway, here's the voltage regulator that was whacked out of the car originally back in the 80s, and I'll graft on some extensions on here, look up the color codes in the wiring diagram. So these two plugs go to the distributor, and then this is going to go to the 2 wires to the, I believe this is power on all the time. That'll connect probably one side of the solenoid, and the other is only powered when there's a start condition. I guess give it some extra spark during starting. But yeah, looking good. The heater hoses run through the firewall and then up underneath, and I've done a lot of my builds like this where I covered the heater in the last video. And then I have this little valve here. I'll put the Amazon link in the description for this. But it's cable. You could use a choke cable from a lawnmower or anything you wanted to do. Run it up to the dash, clamp it on right here, and then just bend the wire around, and that's a ball valve inside here to open and shut the water to adjust your temperature. But that looks nice and clean. Get all this stuff off, get it painted, and I'm ready to put the nervous system in, which is the wiring. So I've built a half a dozen cars or so in the past, and I like using easy wiring. This is a 12 circuit GM fuse block that you could put in and retrofit if you have an old pickup truck, anything like that. Those that follow my channel, look at my playlist, my Volkswagen Tesla electric Super Beetle that I built. I pulled all the old crappy Volkswagen wiring out and went to a nice GM fuse block here made by Easy Wiring. This is modern wire that they didn't have in the 80s, like a silicone type material. But what's nice is every 4 inches each wire is labeled, So you can see, I don't know if you can read that or not, but that one says fuel gauge. So that's going to go to the dash. So probably this bundle here is all my dash wires. And then you'll have your wires going to the rear fuel sender on your gas tank, your turn signals, all that fun stuff. And then you have a bunch of wires that's going to go through the firewall, through a grommet again, and that'll go to the engine, like the alternator, the battery, all that fun stuff. The kit comes, they give you a lot of little tie wraps, all your little connectors you might need. Also a fusible link, which is very important. So the battery power going to this is going to go through this fusible link. So in the event there's a short somehow anywhere in the system, this wire is actually a fuse, and this will blow, which is kind of nice. And then I got another little breaker here, a little circuit breaker to go in for the fuses. But these are all modern type blade fuses that they don't have in the 80s. Turn signal flashers, one's for hazard and one's for your turn signal. But I'll put the Amazon link in the description. This is a 12 circuit, which will cover most of the hot rods or your retrofits like my Volkswagen Beetle I mentioned. They also have a 21 circuit, and I'll put the links in the description. The whole thing, with everything you need, extra connectors and everything, it's about 200 bucks. So it sure beats trying to make wire looms from scratch, which I did back in the 70s and 80s. So just get one of these, drop it in, you put this system in maybe in a couple hours, and start wiring things up, so really quick. But there's also some other manufacturers like Painless and stuff, but I've kind of zoned in on this. You get a nice manual. It gives you a description on how to tie it into different Ford, GM, or Chrysler, tie into your wiring harness on your steering column for your turn signals, all that good stuff. And I have about 5 of these now, so I always label them. And what's neat too, if you need to make some notes, you just scribble on the pages notes, so you've got a good reference for future. So when you want to mount the fuse block, the wires all come out the back and they aim down towards the bottom. So what I usually do is push that in, bend this over so it mounts flush, and then figure out a spot where you want to put it on underneath the dashboard. In some of my builds, I've put them on the side of the toe kick. In this car here, I think a perfect spot would be, I've got this flat spot right up here on the battery box and the strap on the left of the heater. And if I can get this up in here, I can mount this like right up in here. It'll look real nice. And then all the cables on the bottom I can bring out and funnel up underneath the space between the battery box and the transmission hump. I also could put a grommet here and bring the wires down for the back and up for the motor right through the bottom here. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Get the battery out and put some 1/4 bolts in here, about a 2-inch long bolt. It takes 2 bolts, one on the bottom here and then one on the top. Wow, a lot of wiring. It's unbelievable how much wire it takes to run a car. But I've got the fuse block in over here. That worked out really well up in that location. You can see that right there. And these are all the wires to the front of the car. These are left and right turn signals, headlights, high and low beam, coil wire, alternator, exciter wire, all these going through a grommet down through the floor and out into the engine. And then these wires are all the rear wires going to the tail lights. So pretty much got a third brake light, park, right turn, left turn, and then you got your fuel sender wire. So that's all ready to go. I'll just string it up underneath, put it on some split loom, make it look nice. And I was able to extend the distributor wires into the DuraSpark ignition here. So that's all wired and done with a plug relocated. I have my voltage regulator. That's ready to go. Yeah, so I've got just my exciter wire to hook up now on the voltage regulator, and that'll be done. Starter solenoid almost ready to go. Last thing I'm going to do is hook up the battery, a negative to the frame ground, and then I need an engine strap to ground on the frame, and then my positive goes on to the side of the starter solenoid, and then a wire from the starter solenoid down to the starter. That's good to go. And then I need to take some of these wires, sort them out, which is battery, ignition, and run, and figure out which connectors on the steering column for the key switch to operate. Which ones of these I need to connect to. It looks like I'll just use some spade connectors and I'll just plug in the top. But this easy wiring is great. Again, everything's labeled every 4 inches. So now I just need to sort out the front wires, which is pertaining to the engine, and then which wires are the parking lights, turn signals, and all that stuff. But getting close to trying to fire this thing up. So a little bit more work to do. I'll bring you back after pretty much it's all finished up. So I got all the wiring in, tapped into the ignition switch here, ringed out all the connections for my battery on, start, all that stuff off of my key switch, which runs on this wire here. You can see it'll move when I move the key. And all my other engine wiring's on, the coil's connected. I have my DuraSpark electronic ignition, my voltage regulator, my starter solenoid, everything. All this will get cleaned up with a split loom. I have different size split looms here that will cover all the wires. These are the wires that go to the rear tail lights in the back. So that'll all get covered. But anyway, ready to start this up for the first time in 47 years. So everything should be working here. Let's pump some gas. I did fill up the float bowl with some gasoline, so it should be good to go. And I'm in neutral. It's up on jacks anyway, really doesn't matter. But so let's go ahead and hit the key switch here, see what happens. Alright, it's running. Let's see how it starts after it's warmed up a little bit. Very nice, alright. First time in 47 years that this engine has run. So let's look at the punch list here. My rolling chassis was going to take to get it done. All brakes, steering, gas pedal, all this stuff, all complete. Fuse block in, all the wiring's in. So now I have the emergency brake handle, which is going to be pretty simple to do. I'll do that this week. My seat tracks and buckets, so I can actually sit in it and drive it around the neighborhood with the tires on before I get the body on to make it look nice. I need to do the muffler because right now, as you saw, I have just straight header pipes. Pretty loud. And I have a Thrush muffler, which I've used on builds in the past, which I really like. Thrush Turbo, 2.5 inch muffler. And the last thing is to drive it. So I think this will wrap up this video. But wow, it actually ran after 47 years. So the next video, I'm going to get the seats in. I'll show you how to use seat tracks, bolt them into the frame, get these buckets in, get the tires on it, and I should be able to run this around the neighborhood, test it out, make sure everything's working and functioning, and get that all done. Oh, the Volkswagen thing, for those of you following the Volkswagen thing, I'm doing final assembly on this, and I'll have the final reveal on it coming up probably in another week and get that done. But anyway, that'll be one more project done. And I still have the Super Beetle, Tesla Super Beetle, electric Super Beetle convertible that I'm working on, so that'll come into the shop pretty soon after this. Please like, share, and subscribe, pushing 2,000 subscribers, and appreciate everybody's support of the channel and all the Amazon products that people have been buying over the last 12 months or so. But anyway, thanks for watching.